You're the owner of rental properties and a landlord to the tenants who occupy them. As an investor, you're involved in the real estate industry. But as a landlord, you are in the business of dealing with people. Finding, interacting with, and managing tenants is where the reality of your rental property comes alive. Developing a good relationship with your tenants is imperative to the success of your rental property business. You can have a great rental property, but without tenants, you really don't have an occupied rental. You probably had a long thought before you entered the rental property business about the stories you heard of tenants who can, to put it kindly, annoy you. Tenants who let their pets and themselves run amok and destroy the property, or demand middle-of-the-night repairs, or disappearing in the middle of the night owing you more than a month's rent, and leaving all their garbage behind for you to have cleaned up. So besides having your tenants screened properly to weed out the tenants that can be nightmares, you can avoid the problems by learning how to treat and manage your tenants. How to treat your tenants. How to treat your tenants is a very simple concept. Treat them as you would want to be treated. Simple and basic. Treating your tenants with this in mind will go a long way. If you've ever rented someone else's property, how were you treated? The answer would probably be not very nicely, or as an address apartment number with very little interaction with the landlord. A landlord who arrives at a tenant's home at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, unannounced, and says that the handyman needs to replace some of the ceiling tiles that you had complained about 6 months before. The tiles had been falling down from the ceiling, affected by any movement or slight vibration in the house. The tenant complained that they tried contacting the landlord for months about the problem, and either got sent to voicemail, or when they did speak on the phone, the landlord was always interrupted by another call coming in. They'll call the tenant back, and they never do. The landlord let themselves into their tenant's residence when they weren't at home and allowed their kids to rummage through the tenant's kitchen cabinets and drawers and help themselves to the food in their tenant's refrigerator. There was a mess left in the kitchen to top off the intrusion that really didn't have any explanation as to why it happened. These instances display no respect for the tenant's quality of living in the apartment, their privacy, and their property. This is unacceptable behavior on the part of the landlord. A 24-hour notice to tenants before you stop by to do any repair work or just to see how things are going is a courtesy that should be offered to the tenant. Of course, in the case of an emergency like a flood or a fire, this rule doesn't apply. It is also imperative to contact the tenant within a 24-hour window to respond to a phone call, text, or email that is sent by the tenant requesting attention to an issue. Communicating with your tenant. Be polite. Be polite. You are dealing with people and all sorts of personalities. Be professional and courteous. Getting angry at your tenant may not be the best of ideas, particularly if they are locked into a long-term lease. Take the high road. There is no problem that warrants being rude or screaming at your tenant. If you don't like or want them to scream at you, don't scream at them. This is not to say that some tenants don't communicate with their landlord by screaming or being nasty. Unless you have not lived up to your responsibilities as a landlord and the tenant is beyond frustrated, the screaming, name-calling, and nastiness is an unacceptable way to communicate. If that is their way of communicating, you need to set the boundaries and let the tenant know that any screaming, name-calling, or nastiness in speaking with you is unacceptable, and it doesn't get the problem resolved. Let the tenant know you will be more than happy to speak with them and resolve any problem they want to be fixed by speaking in normal tones and with civility. This is how you prefer to communicate and appreciate that they do the same. Don't ignore any repair requests that are made. Tenants grow frustrated and eventually angry because they are ignored by their landlord and the repair is not made. Meanwhile, they're paying rent while whatever needs to be repaired is an inconvenience to them.